After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of personality and its defining characteristics, know the historical antecedents of personality psychology, understand the different domains in the study of personality, evaluate and analyze the questions challenging the personality theorists. Interest in personality is as old as civilization. Ancient philosophers and poets often speculated about why individuals were unique and why they differed from each other in so many ways. People have often relied on the disciplines of astrology, palmistry, tarot cards, among others, to get insights into themselves and significant others. It can be said that classification has been and continues to be an innate need among humans. Personality psychology looks for answers to numerous questions. In what ways do human beings differ? In what situations and along what dimensions do they differ? Why do they differ? How much do they differ? How consistent are human differences? Can they be measured? Personality psychology was a latecomer among the various disciplines within psychology. Before it was adopted as a subject for study, however, it was already a well-established topic for discussion in the public domain. People have always been practicing personality psychology, whether they have recognized it or not. When we seek the right person for a companion, our judgment of his or her personality is indispensable in evaluating our hoped for compatibility. And are personnel directors really doing anything other than analyzing the applicant's personality during a job interview? When we listen to political speeches, how do we rate the speech makers? Are we looking at their command of the issues or their political acumen? Or is it essentially their personality that we evaluate? Similarly, when we describe a physician as a good doctor, have we really assessed the caliber of his or her medical knowledge, or are we saying that we are satisfied with the doctor's professional persona? In most cases, it would seem the latter. These examples illustrate the omnipresence of informal personality assessment. It is a subject of universal interest and continual relevance in all human interactions. On the other hand, although the study of personality is compelling and important, personality as such is also very hard to pin down. Personality falls under the heading of things that most people believe they understand. In fact, there is probably no domain within any field of knowledge in which more people think they have achieved some expertise. Simply put, most people believe they can know or understand other people. We all try to predict behavior, interpret conversations, and make inferences about others' actions. If someone offends us, acts strangely, or seems excessively kind, we will quickly try to understand their motives. In addition, we often draw inferences about what kind of people they are, that is, what personality traits they may possess. Most of us regard ourselves as competent judges of personality. We make use of our skills in personality assessment on a daily basis. However, most of us would have a difficult time explaining exactly how we draw our conclusions about others. Besides evaluating and rating each other's personalities, we also tend to be confident that we are very good in so doing. It is rare to find someone who admits that he or she is not a good judge of people and does not understand the behavior of others. Most of us are not only often incorrect in our assessments of others, but also overconfident of our abilities. Most people have an innate trust in their ability to impute underlying motives to the actions of others. We are personality experts, or at least think we are. Moreover, once we evaluate someone else's personal qualities, we tend to interpret their subsequent actions through the lens of our initial assessment, making it difficult to see that we might have been inaccurate in the first place. Defining personality. The term personality comes from the Latin word persona, which means mask. Those defining personality as a mask view personality as one's public self. It is that aspect of ourselves we select to display to the world. This definition of personality implies that important aspects of a person remain concealed for some reason. Other definitions of personality range from the popular notion that personality allows a person to be socially effective, or a person may be viewed as having a wonderful personality, a terrible personality, or no personality at all, to highly technical definitions involving mathematical formulations. In fact, every theory of personality can be viewed as an attempt to define personality, and these definitions differ markedly from each other. Despite the many definitions of the term, it is generally agreed that personality is the dynamic and organized set of characteristics possessed by a person that uniquely influences his or her cognitions, motivations, and behaviors in various situations. Hence, at least two basic concepts can be used in defining personality. First, individuality. Those aspects that are both characteristic of and unique to a particular person and distinguish a person from everybody else. Second, consistency. The enduring and recurring elements of behavior that persist over time and across situations and lend stability and coherence to an individual's behavior. Thus, the notion of personality is used to explain behavioral differences between persons and to understand the behavioral consistency within each individual. Domains in the study of personality. Dispositional domain. Several personality theorists believe that what distinguish people from one another are the traits and the needs they possess. Some traits, it is anticipated, are learned, example, food preferences, and others are genetically determined, example, one's emotional makeup. Some exert a powerful influence in one's life, example, intelligence, and others have only a minor influence, example, fashion preferences. These theorists believe that the traits one possesses remain relatively constant throughout one's life, and therefore they believe that one's behavior will tend to remain consistent across time and similar situations. The theories of Allport, Cattell, Murray, and the Big Five stress the importance of traits and needs in their explanations of personality. Psychodynamic domain. The psychodynamic domain originated with the work of Sigmund Freud and dominated thinking about personality, mental disorders, and psychotherapy for the first half of the 20th century. It emphasizes the role of unconscious processes, early childhood experiences, and interpersonal relationships to explain human behavior. It uses techniques such as dream analysis, free association, hypnosis, and the analysis of lapses of memory to understand causes of behavior. The theories of Freud, Jung, and Horney emphasize unconscious mechanisms in their analysis of personality. Humanistic existential domain. Theories emphasizing humanistic existential principles probe into questions like, what does it mean to be aware of the fact that ultimately you must die? What are the sources of meaning in human existence or in an individual's existence? According to what values is it best to live one's life, and how are those values determined? Such theories stress on the significance of free will. Humans may be thrown by circumstances beyond their control into certain conditions of life, but how they value, interpret, and respond to those situations is a matter of personal choice. For example, you may be born a male or a female, rich or poor, as a Hindu or a Muslim. You may have been abused as a child, or you may have been raised under loving conditions. No matter what circumstances you find yourself in or what experiences you have had, it is you who gives those environments or experiences their meaning. The theories of Rogers, Maslow, and May emphasize existential humanistic considerations and suggest that it is you who is in charge of your life. Therefore, you alone are responsible for the type of person you become. Behavioral and social cognitive domain. The behavioral domain focuses on the role of the external environment in shaping our personalities. It contends that personality is nothing but a product of unique reward and punishment experiences for an individual. Thus, individual differences in personality arise from the differences in our life experiences. The difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful one, according to some behavioral theorists, is found in patterns of reward and punishment, not in genes. A potent implication of this theoretical position is that personality development can be controlled by guiding the circumstances under which rewards and punishments are dispensed or withheld. Theoretically, in line with this perspective, it is possible to create any type of personality and by systematically manipulating reward and punishment. The theories of Skinner and Dollard and Miller emphasize the importance of reward in the learning process. Considerable interest is also shown in the study of cognitive processes within the realm of personality theory. Such processes determine how information from the environment is perceived, retained, transformed, and acted on by an individual. Theories stressing on the cognitive processes are typically interested in self-regulated behavior and focus on the importance of self-reward or self-punishment, which comes from goal attainment or non-attainment rather than on rewards or punishments that come from sources outside the person. Cognitively oriented theories also tend to emphasize the importance of present experience and future goals in determining behavior and de-emphasize the importance of the past. Theories of Bandura, Michel, and Kelly emphasize social cognitive factors. Biological domain. The most common account of personality is often based on genetics. Statements such as, "She takes after her father," or "He has his uncle's artistic tendencies," imply a genetic explanation of personality because they all have an "it's in the blood" tone to them. Heredity may play a far greater role in determining personality than was previously suspected. Borchardt in 1984 studied identical twins separated at birth and reared apart, and constantly found great similarity in the personalities of identical twins even when they had no contact with each other and were reared by distinctly different families. This led to the conclusion that both the twin studies and adoption studies converge on the surprising finding that common family environmental influences play only a minor role in the determination of personality. In other words, if children reared in the same family setup have similar personality characteristics that can be attributed more to their common genes than to their shared family experiences. The field of evolutionary psychology also stresses the role of genetics and evolved adaptations in its explanation of personality. In fact, all theories of personality are built on an inherited quality, whether it is physiological needs described, for example, by Freud, Skinner, Dollard and Miller, and Maslow. The tendency towards self-actualization described, for example, by Jung, Horney, Rogers and Maslow, or social interest as discussed by Adler. Thus, the question is not whether genes influence personality, but rather to what degree and in what manner. Sociocultural domain. Psychologists have long recognized culture's impact in shaping who we are. Yet throughout much of the 20th century, psychological research largely ignored non-Western groups. Over time, study of diverse ethnic and cultural groups began that led to the development of the socio-cultural perspective. This perspective examines how the social environment and cultural learning influence our behavior, thoughts and feelings. To a large extent, one's culture determines what are considered proper practices in courtship, marriage, child rearing, politics, religion, education and justice. These and other cultural variables explain many important individual differences among humans, that is, differences among people of different cultures. Questions challenging the personality theorist. Personality theorists are in unique position in psychology of studying the entire person. Most other psychologists are concerned with only one aspect of humans, such as child development, old age, perception, intelligence, learning, motivation, memory or pathology. It is only the personality theorists who try to present a complete picture of the human being. The task is monumental and is related not only to developments in other aspects of psychology, but to developments in other disciplines as well. Example, medicine, neurophysiology, biology, sociology, anthropology, philosophy and computer science. The personality theorists attempt to amalgamate information from diverse portions of psychology and other disciplines into coherent, holistic configurations. As personality theorists have attempted this synthesis through the years, they have addressed several questions related to human nature and individual differences. these are questions for which diverse answers exist. No matter what the answer, however, each personality theory addresses them directly or indirectly, nature or nurture. Which is the more important influence on personality? Inherited traits and attributes, that is the genetic endowment, or features of our environment, that is the nurturing influences of upbringing and training. Do the abilities, temperaments and predispositions we inherit determine our personality, or are we shaped more strongly by the conditions under which we live? Many theorists assume that personality is shaped by both sets of forces. To some, inheritance is the predominant influence and environment of minor importance. Others hold the opposite view. Past, present or future. A question that ought to be asked is, how are childhood experiences related to adult personality characteristics? A related question could be, are there critical, irreversible stages of personality development? Which is the more powerful shaper of personality, the past, present or the future? Freud, for example, said that personality was essentially fully developed by the end of the 5th year of life. Keeping this in mind, we must consequently believe that our later development is little more than an elaboration of the basic themes of the early years of life. This view is known as historical determinism. Other theorists stress the importance of future goals for human behavior. Goal-directed or future-oriented behavior is also called teleological behavior, and it plays a prominent role in the theories of Jung, Allport and Bandura and Michel. Both the learning theorists, for example, Skinner, and the existential humanist, for example, May, tend to stress the importance of the present in their explanations of personality. Uniqueness or universality. Is human nature unique or universal? Each person is unique because no cluster of genes or environmental experiences is the same for any two persons. But it is also true that all human beings have a great deal in common, as we share similar brains and sensory apparatuses, and a culture with other humans means we respond as others do to many situations. To a large extent, what we find artistically pleasing, what makes us laugh or cry, and our beliefs concerning the supernatural are culturally determined. Thus, it is possible to emphasize either the fact that each human being is unique, or the fact that each human has much in common with other humans. Both accents are found in personality theories. The study of a single individual is called ideographic research, and theorists such as Allport, Skinner and Kelly used the ideographic approach because they emphasize the uniqueness of each individual. The study of groups of individuals is called nomothetic research, and theorists such as Cattell and Eysenck emphasize the nomothetic approach because they stress traits that many individuals have in common. Motive underlying human behavior. Almost all theorists postulate a master motive for human behavior. That is, they specify what they believe is the major driving force behind most human behavior. Freud, Skinner, and Dollard and Miller postulate hedonism, or the tendency to seek pleasure and avoid pain. For Jung, Horney, Maslow and Rogers, the master motive is self-actualization, or the impulse to realize one's full potential. For Adler, it is striving for superiority. May and Kelly propose a search for meaning and the reduction of uncertainty. Buss postulates the predisposition to express evolved psychological mechanisms. For Bandura and Michel, it is the need to develop cognitive processes that are effective in dealing with the world. Unconscious or conscious determinants. Are people ordinarily aware of what they are doing and why they are doing it, or do unconscious forces impinge on them and drive them to act without awareness of these underlying forces? The depth theories, such as those of Freud and Jung, focus on the unconscious mind. Theories that emphasize unconscious mechanisms confront questions such as: what is the relationship between the conscious and unconscious minds? How can the unconscious be investigated? Can persons ever become aware of their own unconscious motives, and if so, how? Unconscious mechanisms are also important to many theorists, stressing socio-cultural determinants of personality. Example: Adler, Horney and Erikson. And to the evolutionary psychologists, conversely, trait theories such as Allport, Cattell and Eysenck, learning theories such as Skinner, Dollard and Miller, and Bandura and Michel, and existential humanistic theorists such as Kelly, Rogers, Maslow and May either deny or minimize the importance of unconscious determinants of personality. Freely chosen or determined. If all the influences acting on a person at any given time were known, would it be possible to predict that person's behavior with thorough precision? If your reply is yes, you are a determinist. If your response is no, you are probably a believer in free will. For this reason, even strict determinists realize their predictions about behavior must be probabilistic. Most personality theorists are determinists, but as we have seen, they stress different determinants of behavior. The existential humanist theorists are the only who reject the doctrine of determinists, as they believe that human behavior is freely chosen. For them, we are masters of our own destiny. We are not necessarily the victims of our biography, culture, genes, traits, patterns of reward and punishment, or any other factors. Although the dimension of determinism versus free will is more philosophical than scientific, the position theorists take on this issue shapes their way of looking at people and colors their concept of personality. Concept of self. Several theories postulate the self as the organizing agent of personality. Also, it is often the self that is postulated as the mechanism providing individual consistency over time and across situations. The theories of Horney, Allport and Rogers rely heavily on the concept of self. Other theorists claim that using the concept of self simply switches all of the questions we have about the person to questions about the self. In other words, the self is viewed as a homunculus, that is, a little person inside the person who causes the person's actions. According to the opponents of the self-concept, exactly how the self causes a person's actions remains a mystery. The concept of ego is often used in the same way as the concept of self and is criticized for the same reason. Skinner was a theorist who was highly critical of self theories, internally or externally controlled. Where is the locus of control for human behavior? Some theorists stress internal mechanisms such as traits and self-regulatory systems, for example, Allport, Cattell, Eysenck, Horney, Rogers and Maslow. Others stress external factors such as environmental stimuli and patterns of reward, for example, Skinner, Dollard and Miller. Still others emphasize the importance of both internal and external controls, for example, Bandura and Michel. Variables controlling a person's behavior internally are called person variables. Those controlling externally are called situation variables. The determination of the relative importance of person and situation variables for human behavior is a prime concern for personality theorists. Relation between mind and body. How can something purely mental, such as the mind, thoughts or consciousness, influence something purely physical, such as the brain, the body or behavior, and vice versa? One response is that no problem really exists because no mind exists. What we refer to as mental states are nothing more than subtle bodily responses, and this position is referred to as physical monism or materialism. Another answer comes in the form of epiphenomenalism, that is, the position that mental events are merely the byproducts of bodily responses and therefore can be and should be ignored in the analysis of human behavior. Another proposed solution of parallelism claims that an external event causes both bodily and mental events at the same time, but the two types of events are independent of each other. Finally, some maintain the position of interactionism, that is, the mind influences the body and that the body influences the mind, such as when Freud maintains that pathogenic ideas can cause bodily ailments. Consistency of human behavior. Those theorists who stress traits, habits, genetics or unconscious mechanisms in their explanations of personality assume a person's behavior should be consistent in similar situations and over time. For example, it is assumed that a person who possesses the trait of honesty would be honest in most situations. Likewise, an aggressive person would be aggressive in a wide variety of situations. Traditionally, most personality theorists assumed a person's behavior is consistent, and they saw their charge as accounting for that consistency. More recently, however, it has been learned that human behavior may not be so consistent. Michel in 1968 concluded that human behavior is too inconsistent to be explained in terms of such things as traits. Evidence suggests that some persons are consistent in some ways but not in others, and these areas of consistency vary from person to person. The questions that personality theorists should confront are: how consistent is human behavior? What constitutes consistency? What accounts for individual differences in consistency? What variables account for consistency and inconsistency? Optimism or pessimism? Are human beings basically good or evil, kind or cruel, compassionate or merciless? Here we are dealing with a question of morality, a value judgment which supposedly has no place in the objective and dispassionate world of science. However, several theorists have dealt with the question and, as we shall see, it has spawned a vital body of research. Some theorists' views of the human personality are positive and hopeful, depicting us as humanitarian, altruistic, and socially conscious. Other theorists find few of these qualities in human beings, either individually or collectively. In general, personality theorists who believe in determinism tend to be pessimistic. Skinner was a remarkable exception, whereas those who believe in free choice are usually optimistic. These questions give us the scope to analyze and evaluate the theories of personality that you will come across during the course of this paper. Each theory of personality carries a certain response to the questions raised above. Summary. The term personality comes from the Latin persona, or the mask that people present to the outside world. But psychologists see personality as much more than the outward appearances. Personality includes all those relatively permanent traits or characteristics that render some consistency to a person's behavior. The study of personality has been an historical and a commonplace practice. Scholars like Plato, Aristotle have contributed significantly to the personality psychology. There are several domains to the study of personality, with each upholding a different view of human personality and using a separate set of methods of inquiry. Personality theorists address many questions like nature versus nurture, temporality, uniqueness versus universality, sources of motivations, unconscious versus conscious determinants, free will versus determinism, concept of self, internal versus external control, relation between mind and body, human nature, consistency, and optimism versus pessimism regarding human behavior. Thank you.